This episode contains graphic content that may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
So he had made good on his promise that if you leave me, I will have you arrested for the bank robbery.
When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change.
Welcome to episode 9 of the Awareness Podcast, a show that reveals the stories beyond the headlines. Today's episode will unfold in 2 parts. During the first half of the episode, Dottie will be sharing the story of a high school student we will be calling Nancy, who was abducted and forced to do things that would destroy her innocence. Her story is a cautionary tale for the vulnerability of our kids, not just from the internet monsters, but from those around them. I have come across many stories of high school students being tricked by people in their schools, the ones they call friends, who set them up for predators like the ones you're going to hear about today. You will also be introduced to the power of coercion, a term not unlike grooming, in that its power is only matched by its ability to stay under our radar. The second half of this episode will feature Carly Ryan's story. This story will be the final story of the online grooming series for a while. This is an important story, so it must be told. We often underestimate the deviant nature of these predators. We underestimate the desire they have to inflict harm on our children. This story will cap off the grooming series I promised you. Over the last few months, I've shared with you stories that I wouldn't have imagined were possible. Stories that seem like they could only exist in our nightmares. Stories that we now know are very real. If you take away only one thing from this series of episodes, it is my hope that you know that you must beware. They are out there, waiting, lurking, planning. Stay with me. It was just another typical day for Nancy, walking home from school. But this day would be different. This day would be the day she was being watched.
So Nancy's story began as she was walking home from school with some friends, and she noticed this car parked across the road from them, watching them. And it wasn't a car she'd seen before. She was familiar with her neighborhood. She felt comfortable walking home. She didn't think anything about it other than she noticed it. And then I believe she saw it again, and the person in the car actually kind of acknowledged her, like nodded his head and waved and, kind of said hi. And she knew she didn't know him, but she felt a little like he was trying to be familiar with her. And she didn't say anything. She didn't wave back. She just kept giggling and laughing with her friends. Typical carefree, popular girl. She was a cheerleader in high school. She was pretty. She was just being a kid. That was all on her plate, was high school stuff, whatever that was for her. And not too long after that, I think he spoke to her and she rebuffed him. She's like, she remembered her mom's instructions, don't talk to strangers, from back when she was a little kid. Yeah, she was doing it right. She picked up her pace and got out of there and thought, well, that's over. Clearly now he realizes I'm not interested. And not too long after that, not the next day, but, maybe a few days or a week later, her mom was in the hospital for some health issues that were pretty serious. Didn't really have a dad around for a second parent. So she was staying with a relative and just feeling kind of lonely because these medical issues, it wasn't 1 or 2 days. I mean, it was a long bout at the hospital. So couple of 2 or 3 days after her mom's been gone for a while, she's feeling kind of dislodged and scared, not knowing if her mom's going to make it, pressures of school. Now she's not a just carefree, happy cheerleader high school girl. She's got some real problems and she's too young really to know how this is going to work out. So she's feeling really lonely. And there's this guy, the same one that had been in the car before, and he pulls up beside her. And she doesn't know this, but I believe he had been watching her and could see the change in her demeanor. So he knew, because he's a predator, this is the day. This will be my day to approach her. And so he did. This time she spoke back. And I don't know how the conversation started. I just know that it continued. And that's all he needed. He had finally got the hook. Like when you're fishing and you throw the bait out, you reel it in, nothing. You throw it out, reel it in, nothing. You throw it out, you get a bobble, and he's just about to set the hook because the fish is playing with it. That's where we are right now. So she's engaged and talking to him. That's such good news for him. So she feels really bad. And he says, hey, my friends live right here, right on the same street you do. They're your neighbors. They're going to have a party. Come on over and we'll make you feel better. I know you feel sad. We just want you to feel better. It's scary not to know how, your mom's going to turn out. A couple of chance encounters, and then all he had to do was get her talking. And I'm sure he knew what to say. I don't doubt that the conversation is much more elaborate than I can describe. Against her better judgment, and she says so now, she knew not to go, but she went. And in the back of her mind, she heard her mom's words, but she felt so bad. I think she just wanted the hope of some relief from the fear that she was experiencing and the discomfort of being with another relative and whatever else she was going through. Probably the absent father. When your mom's sick and you don't have a dad, it's a lonely world. And so, like fathers and mothers, if you are not there, those children feel that absence all the time. And so this was definitely playing on her. And against her better judgment, she went to the party. Well, guess what? It wasn't really a party. And it was a house that he had arranged to be at. Maybe he had, colleagues there. I don't call them friends because I think it was in concert. And she thought she was going to a party and coming home that night. She never made it back home. He got her in the car. Maybe he wasn't even part of that house. Who knows? Because it's such a blur now. And she thought she was going down the street she wound up all the way, states away, from California to Texas. She thought she was going around the corner, and it was not to be. So, of course, when she does, pretty soon she realizes, uh-oh. Now, here's the mistake. This guy did not groom her, other than the first few meetings. But he did coerce her, and that works too.
What is the difference between commanding somebody, A, commanding B to do something, i.e. coercion, and A, persuading B to do something?
The difference is that A commands B on the threat that if B doesn't do it, he goes to jail. Or if B doesn't do it, he gets hit over the head. In my opinion, I am going to distinguish between persuasion and coercion entirely on the basis of the actual use or threat of use of physical force. Not mental persuasion, not brainwashing. I find it impossible to accept brainwashing except under conditions of physical coercion as well. You may have a person held violently and brainwashed in that sense, but other than that, the fundamental distinction I would draw is a use of force.
So it's a little different method, but same effectiveness. So within 5 minutes, she realizes, uh-oh, we got a problem. So how does he get her to not jump out of the car, scream, take control of the wheel? Well, again, he targeted her before she knew he was around, and he knew that her grandfather, who she loved very much, remember absent dad, grandfather probably filled in, was very ill in the hospital. So he didn't even target the mom, because I think they're very good at reading these kids. He knew what to do, and must have had intelligence on her from somebody near to her that she doesn't even know who it is. So a peer, informant, recruiter, whatever. Maybe one of those friends she was walking down the street with, because how did he know where to park and when? Somebody near her gave him information. So she's shocked as heck he knows about the grandfather, and he says, if you don't do what I say, I will kill him. And here's where he is, and here's his room, and probably impressed upon her that murder has been something he's done before. So he's got her. She's like, and she's a kid. What choice has she got here? She is outmatched, outwitted, and outthreatened. So along the way, he tells her they've run out of money and gas somewhere between California and Texas, and she's going to have to go shoplift and get him some food and some money. And of course, she resists, and he beats her, and he reminds her of all that he could do to her, and so she does it. Not willingly, but she does it. I think she shoplifted, and then I don't have the details. It's kind of a blur. Somehow she got some money, so I don't know if she lifted someone's purse or found some way. This guy was quite the criminal, and he used other people to do his crimes. So that gets him a little further, and he says they're going to a family member's on the south side of Houston. They get almost there. Guess what? They run out of money and stuff again, so he induces her to steal again. Of course, she doesn't want to do that, but I think they got a little, but not enough to make it. So they're kind of now in Houston. Now, you have to understand these stops where they run out of gas are really strategically placed when you think about it. So she's already committed a couple of crimes. She's terrified. She's trying to save her grandfather. She probably sleep deprived. It's not like he got a hotel or anything. They've been in the car for 2 days, maybe 3, maybe 4, who knows. So when he runs out of gas the second or third time, they're right in the part of Houston that's real good for street prostitution, ironically. And so he says, here's what you're going to do. And of course she resists, but he's like, yeah, you're going to do it. We're out of money. And so that's kind of the entryway into him prostituting her.
From the time the predator spoke to Nancy to the time that she was on the streets in Houston being prostituted, it was only a couple of days. This whole ordeal has taken place within 2 weeks.
So the whole thing is a week or less. 10 days at the outside. And so, of course, she's worried that her mom's freaking out. He's in the hospital with, serious health issues. And so, the treat was you get to call your mom. So she got to call her mom, but he listens and he orchestrates the conversation. So the mom, of course, has been in the hospital, maybe conscious, maybe not, I'm not sure. But she's first getting the knowledge that her daughter isn't where she's supposed to be. And she can tell by her voice something bad's going on. They were worried, but, she went to this party and, there's somebody feeding them information that was erroneous, I'm sure. So mom now is getting this phone call, has been worried, has been figuring out, what do I do? I'm stuck here in the hospital, got no husband. Granddad, is in the hospital. So, really vulnerable time for the family to react. And the daughter says, I'm okay. I'm with my boyfriend. We're in Houston. Don't look for me, or something to that effect. And so the mom is freaking out, calling for help. Police are like, well, she was at a party and now she's missing. They're not really getting that this is urgent. She's 17, maybe, I forget if she was 16 or 17, but she was on that age where they're kind of like, well, by the time we find her, she'll be, almost an adult. So there was this apathetic response, according to the mom. I wasn't part of the case then, but that's, the information I have is sounds consistent with what I was seeing at the time. And for a sick mom who's not used to dealing with the system, she was frustrated. And I don't know if she had the energy to demand help. She was still from some pretty severe medical issues. So I don't want to blame one party for what's going on, but let's just say everything failed. Everything. And so this guy finally gets to wherever he says he lives. I'm sure with his mommy. I mean, he was kind of the guy that still lives with his mom at age 50, whatever.
At this point in the story, Nancy has been forced to prostitute. It is important to note that Nancy is only one of a few girls and women who were being forced into prostitution by this guy. This was not prostitution by online solicitation. This was done on the streets and by word of mouth. As we continue the story, Nancy is prostituting with another female. That other female is a minor. The police are now on to them.
Police actually intervened and arrested her because she was in the proximity of a minor being prostituted, and they were saying she was prostituting the minor, not getting that she was the victim as well. So now he bails her out, I guess, or somehow she gets out, but she's got that prostitution charge with a minor. And I'm murky on how that worked out, because now you would not get out. But at that time, somehow she got arrested and got out again. And maybe, again, misunderstanding the trafficking laws. And so now she's got this big problem. She's not only missing and been through all this, and she's got a criminal charge and no money and no way to fight it. So now that's pretty good for him. And, of course, he's the hero for getting her out of jail. Not really in her mind, but, that's what he's telling himself. You owe me. And so they wind up outside of Houston, more south to some other towns between Houston and Louisiana. And he's prostituting her there. And the police there kind of know he's a bad guy, so they keep pulling him over. And this is what coercion will do. He actually took her with him to the chief of police, to the little town, and complained that they were harassing him. And she couldn't speak, one, because she had a charge, and two, because the grandfather was still at the hospital and he was still threatening him. So she's in the chief of police offices of a police department that would love to arrest this guy, and she can't say anything.
All Nancy had to do was speak up. to let the officers know she was in trouble. You see, the predator was well known to the local police. He was known for selling drugs. The police wanted badly to find a reason to arrest him. But on this day, Nancy wasn't going to give it to them. Her grandfather was still in the hospital, and the threat to his life was ever present. The outcome of this complaint was exactly what the predator wanted.
And it resulted in they quit pulling him over because she was kind of hopeful she would find that moment to escape. So it actually worked in his favor to complain and threaten to sue him or whatever he was going to do, file charges, whatever, harassment. So now she's alone with him and beats her quite a bit. And whoever they're staying with, he beats her so much that they make him leave. So it's getting more and more violent rapidly. So then one day, Loser comes up with the idea to rob a bank. Loser is the bad guy. I say that because I have to have some relief because it's so painful. If I don't make fun of him, I'll get really where I can't process this. So he comes up with, now they're in Houston, Texas, about to rob a bank. Can you imagine what a bad idea that is? We don't take bank robbery very well. Most states don't, but, we're kind of known for not putting up with that. And so there's no empathy no matter what your excuse is for robbing a bank. So he tells her what he's going to have her do, and she resists. And he's beat her up so much she doesn't feel the pain anymore. She's like, fine, beat me. I'm not going to do it. Well, he beats her a little harder, so yeah, she's going to do it. And he sends her in with a wig and a bag and a note that he wrote. And so this is important later, so listen to the details. She walks straight in front of the cameras, stands in line. Now think about most bank robberies, right? She stands in line in full view of all the cameras, walks up to the next teller, hands him the note, and says, I want all your money. I'm robbing the bank. And it's not even threatening him. It's just saying, give me the money. And so the teller, following protocol, gives her all the money and puts a dye pack in the bag. And she knows that. She saw him do it. She's still standing there. She's not hiding herself in any way. And she walks out. And going out, she trips somehow, or maybe on purpose, because she's not running. She's not trying to hide. She's not threatening anybody. Like, I'm so glad to be in here instead of out there, right? She's, taking her time, taking the slow route to get out. She, quote, trips and spills all the money across the driveway and wound up only having $800 in the bag by the time she gets to the car, which I thought was brilliant, actually. And so then the dye pack goes off when he's in the bag counting the money.
Nancy was exacting some revenge. Little as the act might have been, she purposely left the dye pack in the bag with what was left of the money.
Yeah, she let it stay in. She's a smart girl. So he's counting his money, and later he's trying to wash the money, right? He's trying to, you can't. That's why I call him Loser. I'm like, duh, that's why they put the dye pack. So he doesn't net anything from the robbery, but he tells her, if you leave me, I will have you arrested for the robbery. So Grandpa dies of natural causes, whatever the ailment was that had him in the hospital. And she's like, cool, I am out of here. So he has her out prostituting. She goes to the police officer that was on the street watching all the prostitution, which makes me nuts, and says, please pretend to arrest me. I need help. Now, there's a big red flag. You got a trafficking victim, right? How many people beg you to arrest them? So he does. Yes. So he arrests her, not really, but, pretends to arrest her, gets her to a shelter. They get her back home. She's been through hell and back, committed crimes that she didn't want to commit, been raped, been beaten, been threatened, and she lost her grandfather, who she loved very much. No funeral, nothing. She's just like all that she lost can never be replaced.
Nancy made it. She escaped the grip of her trafficker. It's only been a couple of weeks since she was kidnapped, but the experiences she had changed her forever. But now that she's home, she can begin to rebuild the shattered pieces of her life.
So she's home literally a day, and then big knock on the door. It's the FBI, and they've come to arrest her and extradite her back to Texas. So he had made good on his promise that if you leave me, I will have you arrested for the bank robbery. This is when I get the case. This is the first time I'm a part of this case. And her wonderful mother calls me, somehow found me like a needle in a haystack. I mean, I was just me. I don't know how from that far away she found me, but she did. She had no money. She had, she was in California. The daughter was in jail in Texas. And she says, I need your help. And I'm like, I don't think I can even help you. I mean, robbing a bank in Texas, I mean, there is no excuse for that. But I said I would try. I found what we call a low bono criminal attorney. So they charge less. And so usually they want to make a plea deal. And I engaged him and said, you will not plea this case. And you will have me as an expert witness or you don't get the case. And this is how you can take control of your cases. You don't have to be passive. Just because someone has a law degree doesn't mean they're an expert in this situation. So it was a battle, but I got a hold of somebody. Well, then I had to raise his fee because even at low bono, they want money. I mean, I don't get paid, but they do. And so I found a nonprofit that would give the money for the attorney. So I have all these players. I put together this team. And then the mother wants to come to the trial. So I find money to fly the mother down. And usually those trials are 10 minutes the most because Houston has kind of a big docket, as you can imagine. And thank the universe and God, we got a educated, wonderful judge. And I say that because I watched her before we went to trial. And she was a very competent, learned, listening judge, not just one pushing the paper through. So that was the first miracle. And the victim had already pled guilty to bank robbery. So I was like, oh my gosh, she was facing 22 years when this started. And again, I was saying, I don't know how I can help you. And then we're going to, I'm nervous as heck because I am the expert witness that is going to explain what I just explained about how you can rob a bank and how a victim could be forced to do this act and point out where she had reached out for help by dropping the dropping the money, leaving the die pack in, standing in full view of the camera. You know, these are things that I pointed out as an expert. And she got the least amount of time possible, which was probation for 6 months. And that was only because she'd already pled guilty. They couldn't do any less. And the judge followed her probation, gave her letters. I mean, if there was ever a case that was won completely, it was this one. And there were two reasons. One, because I was able to set up what happened so people understood. And then two, because the victim was so incredibly honest and believable. Those two factors won the case. And it will always be that way. If you can set up the platform where when the victim is questioned, that they answer truthfully and people understand their answers, you will win these cases.
Nancy's brutal honesty won her favor with the judge, despite the prosecutor's attempts to discredit her.
And the prosecutor was trying to attack both us, me, and the prosecutor attacked the mother so much she never even got to say a word. Every time the mother opened their mouth, the prosecutor objected. So the mother never even got to speak. So by the time it was my turn, I was the only witness there was. And there was a lot of pressure. I was pretty nervous. But then I set up why this happened, what the indicators were, how I knew it was trafficking, and how she had followed, actually, there's a course I took in college about just warfare and how you can resist a commanding officer's orders. And if you follow these steps, you will not be held accountable if he has broken the laws of war. And I went through that and showed how she had resisted, she had objected, she had tried to disrupt the act. And so she had done all the elements necessary to resist that order or force that she was given. And so I set that up so then she could say, yes, I fell down on purpose. Yes, I left the dye pack in. Yes, I wanted the cameras to see me. I never said I didn't do this. Now, if she had said, I never said I didn't do this, and there wasn't me explaining why she had to do it, she couldn't have gotten that part in and found that she would have been found guilty. So it was an awesome team effort from the nonprofit that funded the lawyer to the lawyer that let us help him design the case and trusted that we could win because he hadn't done this before, and to the judge. We were probably there 2 hours where there normally 15-minute trial would be a long one. So it was a miracle on every level. And she was stunning in the probation, actually looked forward to it. She wanted that break before going back home and to build some healing. After probation, she returned to her family and excelled in every way possible. I see her occasionally on social media, and she's beautiful. And, I don't doubt that there's issues, but overall, I would call it a total success.
Dottie leaves us with some takeaways from Nancy's story.
Well, in Nancy's story, it was lightning quick. It was, days, not months, not years. And there wasn't the grooming, but there was the coercion, which both helped and hurt this case. So there wasn't time to have any side effects. She was just gone. But as soon as she found the way out, she fled and she told what happened. And that's why the grooming is almost scarier, because had he taken time to properly groom her, she could still be there. But as soon as she got the effort to leave, as soon as that coercion was removed, she was free. And then the second coercion came, and then she was free. So the bad part was also the good part, that she's free of him, has no desire to ever encounter him again.
My curiosity got the best of me, and I asked Dottie, how does she get through working on these types of cases?
Well, I start with the point that I'm honored that for some reason I was brought in to help. And perhaps that's my purpose, is to be there at that moment. Whatever that's going to be. It could be a lot of help, or it could be one piece of the puzzle. The other thing is that I'm not defeated by this, because I know the ones we've helped needed, wanted, and benefited from it. So I focus on the positive. On the days when that's not enough, I take photographs of flowers and do art and create as much color and texture and beauty as I possibly can. And that gives me a lot of peace, because the world is both good and tragic, happy and sad, beautiful and in some places ugly. And so I try to keep that balance. And then the usual things like family and rest, chocolate. And I have horses. I still have my horses. And whenever I can't use all the previous things to overcome the trauma, the horses finish the job, and then I'm okay again.
Dottie's an amazing individual, and I am thankful that she has collaborated with me on these stories. Her disposition allows her to handle these traumatic events gracefully. I did ask her if she ever had to seek help for dealing with the trauma of these cases.
Yes, I actually have. I have some amazing colleagues that actually flew from across the country when I needed help one time. I couldn't shake a case. I felt like I had failed, and I didn't know my unconscious had connected the victim to my daughter. And the reason I had failed, the reason I couldn't function is not logically, but traumatically, unconsciously, which shows how strong it is. I thought I had failed my daughter. And when they came and helped me process this correctly, in literally 30 minutes, I was walking out the door taking my next case, where prior to that, I didn't even want to answer my phone. So we all need help. We can't do it alone. And we all need to recognize when we've met our wall and ask for help to fix it. And I'm grateful to my friends who dropped what they were doing and put me back in motion.
Up next, in 2006, Carly Ryan, a teenager from Adelaide, Australia, thought she had met her dream boyfriend online. His name was Brandon Kane, an 18-year-old Texas-born musician from Melbourne, Australia. Brandon was the adopted son of Shane. All seemed well, but you know already, this story does not have a happy ending. Stay tuned. Over the next few months, Brandon and Carly's relationship began to grow as he showered her with compliments. Sonia Ryan, Carly's mom, says Carly told her that, quote, Brandon was really cute and she really liked him. As time went on, Carly began to communicate with Shane, Brandon's father. There were times when their chats made Carly's friends feel uncomfortable. There were times when Shane would speak to them, asking if they were bisexual and liked kissing girls. Something wasn't right. The behavior was odd, but not enough to stop Carly from communicating with Shane and Brandon. As you will find out, Shane and Brandon don't even exist.
I walked into a room with a curtain and they said to me, "Are you ready?" And they pulled the curtain back and there was my daughter. Her fists were clenched, her jaw was clenched, she was beaten. She suffered terribly at the hands of a monster with no remorse. Where does that leave me as her mother? That leaves me in a position to either die or find the strength somewhere from within to fight. Fight not only for Carly, but fight for every single young person that is online trying to make connections. I believe that this is what Carly would want me to do. Carly was a real light. She was really kind and trusting and loving. Unfortunately, I believe that it's those very qualities that Gary Newman used to lure my daughter. Carly was super excited that she'd met this boy online, and I would look over her shoulder and she'd be having pretty normal conversations about life and school. This happened for quite some time, over an 18-month period. And, I just believed that Brandon was just another one of her friends. And then one day she came to me and said, "Mum, I think I've got feelings for this boy. I really like him. And I'd love for you to meet his dad." And so I spoke to whom I thought was Brandon's father on the telephone. Sounded like a normal man, told me he was a security guard, said he was coming through South Australia and would like to drop some presents off for her birthday. And I met Gary Newman posing as Brandon's father, Shane. He showed me a security license with all fake details. He was wearing a security shirt with a fake embroidered emblem. He went to so much trouble to deceive us. Nothing could have prepared myself or Carly for a criminal like this. Little did we know he was operating 200 fake profiles of young men online to lure girls. So Gary Newman was actually Brandon. He came to visit. He didn't sit near Carly, he didn't do anything inappropriate. It wasn't until the last day of his visit he looked at Carly in a certain way, and it gave me the shivers. And I thought, oh no, something's wrong. And I kicked him out of the house, and I said if he come back or tried to talk to Carly, I would contact police. I took her mobile phone from her, I cut the internet off. Little did I know that he had access to our home line. So while I was at work, he was calling Carly. And I believe that he had already been able to establish that real trust with her. She believed that Brandon was real. She believed that Brandon loved her. And little did I know that Gary Newman was planning to come back to Adelaide to, in his words, fix her up. So on February 19th, 2007, Carly came to me all dressed up and said to me, Mum, I'm going to go and meet my friends in the city. We're going to hang out. I'm going to go back to my friend's house. Is it all right if I stay there overnight? So it was nothing out of the ordinary. And she skipped off the veranda and she said, love you, Mum. And little did I know that would be the very last time I'd see my daughter. Carly's body was found that morning at 6 a.m. in the shallows at Port Elliot.
Carly Ryan's 48-year-old alleged killer is taken into custody.
Carly's killer was found guilty of her murder and sentenced to life in prison.
When everything happened to Carly, it was like being pulled into some kind of black abyss that Gary Newman had created. I can't sit in that space because it's sitting in her suffering and it would just dissolve my soul. I think what people don't realise is the trauma, and I wouldn't want them to realise. Unfortunately, these crimes continue to happen, and there's more and more people being arrested for trying to procure children.
And that's going to conclude this round of grooming episodes. As I dug into stories about child sex trafficking, I kept coming across the term grooming. And like most people, I brushed it off and kept reading the stories. However, it kept nagging me. So I mentioned in episode 1 that I would bring you an episode about grooming. This was before I realized the true nature of the danger of grooming. The term seems so passive. It doesn't carry with it power. As we now know, the danger is far more real. I'm not done with grooming. As I researched this topic, I found other stories that are intertwined with grooming, and I will be bringing you those stories as well at a later date. Dottie and I are in constant communication, and we will likely bring you more from the world of human trafficking. Thank you, Dottie, for meeting with me and for sharing your stories. On behalf of the listeners and me, thank you for your service. And that's going to do it for this episode. Coming in 2 weeks, the safety doc, Dr. David Perodin, is back. We will begin our deep dive into 5 stories about school attacks. The discussion will happen over 2 to 3 episodes. Some of these stories you have heard, others are going to be new to you. Thanks to Shane Yoder and his team at PutThemInASong.com for the theme music and Ed Luby for the awareness logo. And to my family, your support means the world to me. Until next time, stay engaged and stay aware. I'll talk to you soon.